and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your host that knows to move away from the mic so that we know we're starting, host Madelyn.
Oh, was that the reason why? I thought you had forgotten that you weren't supposed to do the joke first.
No, I kept waiting for you to lean back.
Oh.
It's like we're in the same room. And that's Emma.
Yeah, this is Emma.
And we're here to get you some side quest action here on this lovely April Sunday.
It sure is April.
That it is.
It sure is also Sunday.
Definitely Sunday.
This is how I measure days now. It's like, when does the podcast go up?
It's true. It's that I have one day of work that is like the day that things always happen. And so it's just sort of between those 2 days. It's like podcast on Sunday, work event on Tuesday. And then it's the other time. Is the mash of the other 4 days.
Yeah. For me, it's just like, I just keep having to check on the weekends that it's not a weekday. I'm like, am I really sure that it's not Thursday, though? Let me just check again.
I really thought Thursday, it was Friday. I thought it was Friday on Thursday this week.
And that's sad.
I almost panic sold my turnips. I was like, oh, I only have one more day. But I had 2 more days.
That's good.
And it worked out. Made a little more money. So
good.
Know your days of the week, folks.
But we're not talking about Animal Crossing today. That'll be for 2 weeks from now. Mm-hmm. Because it's my pick for a side quest topic. And it's not very relevant to Animal Crossing, although God knows we will try.
We'll work it in somehow.
So we've talked about this in our previous side quest format back a few months ago. What do I mean? A year ago when Sekiro came out.
Yeah. A few months.
I mean, it is a few months in the grand scheme of human history, but it was like a year ago. When Sekiro came out. We talked in our news magazine format a little bit about the debate that happened around that regarding difficulty modes in games. And that's something that's interesting to me. So not particularly prompted by anything, but I wanted to take advantage of our new format to go a little more in depth about it.
It did get kind of Twitter relevant this week.
Right, yeah.
With the release of Final Fantasy VII and the Kotaku article poorly titled "Easy Mode is Too Easy."
Yeah.
Or whatever.
The headline's not great, but basically what the article is saying is that it feels like there should be a difficulty mode between easy and normal. Which I have not switched to easy yet, so I could not speak for it, but based on the way the article sounded...
Nice little brag there. I haven't tried easy.
I haven't gotten to a point where I feel like I need to switch to easy. Apparently there is a point where I've seen people say, just switch to easy, don't do it to yourself. So I'm looking forward to that. But based on the way the article described, it does kind of seem like there should be something between easy and normal. But the article title is particularly bad. Because it's just like, well, it's a little stupid, really, on the face of it.
Yeah. Well, we all know Twitter loves to get mad at Kotaku.
Yes.
But that was not really the instigation of us picking this topic. Emma had picked this topic well before that became a mini tweet firestorm.
Yeah.
So, lot to talk about here.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
I guess just, like, talking about different ways that a game can be labeled as, like, difficult. Right? Because that's just, like, that's not a word that necessarily means the same thing applied to different games.
Absolutely.
You know? So that's something I was interested in talking about, is, like, what actually makes a game difficult, and when is that, like, good and bad? Like, when is it like, oh, this is difficult, and when is it like, this is difficult, you know? The difference between those two.
The readings you just gave there, that was nice. That was evocative.
Because I found that, like, as I've been in college and in adult life, like, I just turn stuff down if I'm frustrated with it. Whereas, like, at the same time, I've been spending a lot of time on, like, the Kingdom Hearts 3 data fights, which are super difficult. But I was trying to think of, like, but I don't feel the need to be like, oh man, I wish these were easier, you know? Or like, oh man, I wish I could just get through this. So I was trying to think about the difference between those two different impulses, you know?
I have a few thoughts.
Sure, yeah.
Well, number one, speaking to the Kingdom Hearts data bosses, one thing that definitely takes some of the pressure off of that, I think, is that they're not keeping you from anything.
Well, they sort of are. I mean, I've watched it on YouTube.
You've already seen it, though.
But I didn't keep myself spoiler free. But theoretically, they are blocking you from things.
Right, but for you specifically, they are not.
Right.
You've already seen that content. The only thing they're blocking you from is, I guess, probably some kind of PlayStation trophy.
Right.
That you would get from seeing that whole thing go down. So part of it is that, right? Like, they're not keeping you from anything. They're not stopping you from progressing in the game. You're playing them specifically for the challenge. Which, you know, plenty of people, I guess, play games specifically for the challenge. But if you're playing for any other reason, like you're invested in the story, or you want to get those PSN trophies or whatever, at that point, hitting something that's so much harder can definitely become frustrating because it's keeping you from other things you enjoy about the game. Whereas with those data bosses, like, not only are they not keeping you from anything, but they're very much advertised as, like, these are super hard, right? And that's sort of the whole appeal. So you play them with that in mind when you're in the mood for that kind of a experience.
Right. I was also just thinking that perhaps it's just the difference between being in a system where I have some sense of mastery and being in a system where I'm less confident.
Mm-hmm.
Or even, like,
yeah,
I've had the feeling of, like, in the boss battles, like, it's like, if I die, it feels like it's because I did something wrong, right? Whereas I've had other experiences, like, most recently it's been, like, Tales of Vesperia. Last year when I was playing it, I turned the difficulty down on several boss battles. And then Trails of Cold Steel just has an option when you die if you want to weaken the enemies and retry, and I've done that a couple of times. Just because, like, I feel like I've done everything right and I'm still dying, right? It feels like it's coming down to luck at a certain point, and I just don't have the patience to keep trying until things work out.
Well, this gets us into the kind of idea of fair difficulty versus unfair difficulty, right? I don't know. Before I jump in, do you have thoughts on that? Do you have ideas of what make things feel fair? Because you were just talking about, you know, sometimes it comes down to luck. And so when do things feel fair and when do things feel unfair to you?
I mean, I think that's a key, right? Like, did you die because of an error that you made, or did you die because the enemy AI got a cheap hit in?
Sure.
You know? And by cheap hit, I don't mean, like, they did, like, you did something wrong and they got a hit in. I mean, like, it feels like you are using the combat system as it is meant to be used. And, you know, still, like, it's not clicking.
Was it you who shared with me the thing about Fire Emblem, that the percentages, like, genuinely are kind of wrong?
Yeah. But I think in Fire Emblem it's kind of like that because it feels like that. Like, it's more, the percentages are how the percentages feel versus how the percentages actually are.
But do they feel that way because I'm so used to them being that way from Fire Emblem?
I mean, possibly, yeah.
You know, like, I've been conditioned from years of playing Fire Emblem that, like, 80% means, like, 2%.
That's not it. Means the way Fire Emblem works is that if it's above 50, it's actually has a greater chance to hit, and if it's below 50, it has a less chance to hit.
I know.
It's not that 80 is 2%.
I know that.
It's that actually 80 is like 83%.
Fair enough. But it sure feels like, whatever, you know the way Fire Emblem feels, right? Whenever you have, like, a less than, like, a 90% chance to hit, it's like, okay, we have to expect that this is not going to hit.
Yeah, but that's the appeal of that game, right? You go in with an 80 and you know, like, well, if this doesn't hit, like, I'm expecting that, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's part of the culture around that game, and it is.
Whereas when like an enemy gets like a 1% crit off somehow, I'm pretty sure that's not actually possible. I think 1% is 0%. But you know what I mean.
Yeah. I don't know. I do feel like the Death Knight got a lot of improbable crits.
He has a really high critical rate, actually.
I know he does, but it's still only like a 30% chance. It doesn't feel like he should have been able to, like, kill all of my characters in a row on one turn.
It happens.
That's an interesting discussion, so we can talk about your favorite game.
Sure.
Like, with Fire Emblem, and the new ones, the 3 houses specifically, and the addition of Divine Pulse, what are your... I mean, it definitely changes the difficulty of the game.
Oh, yeah. For sure. I mean, I think that my perspective has definitely been colored now by the fact that I work. Right? Like, I really enjoyed... I don't know how I did it when I had to reset the map every time someone died in old games. I don't know how I got through those games. Like,
they were smaller, the maps, a lot of them. That's
part
of it.
Okay.
But...
That one, do you know, I want to see if you know what I'm talking about. You know that one map in Sacred Stones with Innis down in the lower fortress? And you're up top, and then Marissa comes, this is a recruitable character, like, from the bottom right. Yeah. And so you have to save Innis before they get overwhelmed, and you have to recruit Marissa by getting Garrick over there, and you have to live, and, like, big reinforcements come from the south.
This is vaguely familiar, but not familiar
It's
enough.
like a big, complicated map, and I have distinct memories of, like, having to reset it, like, 10 times. Because, like, somebody down in Innis's group would keep dying, or Marissa would accidentally kill herself against somebody. Right?
Yeah.
So, like, you say the maps were smaller, but I don't really remember them that way, to be honest.
Maybe they weren't. There was a lot less other content. How about that? That was the only content.
Fair.
So.
That's fair. But, like, if Fire Emblem 3 Houses didn't have Divine Pulse, like, I don't know if I would have gotten through a single playthrough.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think I just would have played differently.
I would have certainly put it on, like, casual.
So I get that, and especially in a game that is so much just about the relationship sim of it all. But I didn't find the game as hard as the other Fire Emblems, and I've been trying to pick apart whether that's because I knew I had the Divine Pulse and I wasn't having to reset over and over. I mean,
I used Divine Pulse at least once on almost every map.
I can't remember. I mean, there was at least one time where I got down to using almost all of mine, but it was really because we were fighting the Death Knight, and I was taking some risks just in the interest of, like, killing the optional boss.
Yeah.
I do just think I probably would have just played a little different. That I would have had to pick characters.
Well, yeah, you certainly would have played a little different. I'm just thinking about the fact that I don't have time for things that are locking me out anymore. Like, there's the social stigma against playing in easy mode among the gamers of the internet. But, like, I don't understand how people have time, is the thing. To, like...
They get good, Emma.
Do all of these games on the hardest difficulty. Like, what... How do they have time?
Get good. How do they have time to get good? I don't know.
Yeah, that too.
They have. I mean, I just think some people have more of a tolerance for grinding, maybe. And that's, like, soothing as their after-work game, and that they power up their character enough.
That doesn't work for games like Sekiro, though.
I mean, true. I wasn't talking about Sekiro specifically, although certainly that's one that we ought to talk about. How do you feel about the fact that, this is a big question, I guess, but that From Software just, like, doesn't do difficulty modes?
I mean, it's a complicated question. It certainly precludes me from buying their games. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if that, like... Some people don't buy certain games because they're genres they don't like, and that game isn't required to make it a genre that's appealing to all gamers, you know? Yeah. So, like, there's that. So, like, in no way are they obligated to. Would it be nice if they did? Yeah, sure. Would it widen their game's appeal? Yeah. Would it risk pissing off their hardcore fans? Yeah. So I can see why they don't have it, especially for something that's as... Like, it takes a lot of work just to make one difficulty mode feel balanced, you know? And especially for something precise as the Souls games and stuff like that. I can see why putting in resources to make an easy mode feel balanced might be not cost effective. And, like, I think it is important to remember that, like, an easy game and an accessible game aren't necessarily the same thing.
Yep.
Like, there's some tie in there, but you can make a difficult game that's still an accessible game. I don't really know how FromSoft's accessibility options are, so I can't speak on that specifically. But, I mean, I think it's just nice to let people experience your games, if possible.
Well, sure, and it's a business, right? So it does feel like in almost every situation, including more modes that make the game more appealing to more people, should be a capitalism win for you.
Sure. For FromSoft, I could see them receiving some blowback for putting in an easy mode from people who play FromSoft games, though.
I just don't believe that people genuinely boycott games. I'm sorry. I just don't.
I don't mean boycott. I didn't say boycott their game. I said blowback that maybe they don't want to deal with still. It's still a hassle and costs money when you have to deal with a PR issue, you know?
But aren't they used to? I mean, whenever they release a game, it's there's a week of press about how hard the game is and how there's no easy mode.
Yeah, but fans of the games don't care.
That's fair, I guess.
Well, that's not fair. People writing about it are fans of the game. But yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. The calculus of it is interesting. That's all. I wonder how they continue to make that decision when there are so many write-ups wondering about why they don't have an easy mode, and whether it's that all of that press actually nets them more sales than they think having an easy mode would. It feels like probably where that all comes down to.
I mean, Sekiro won Game of the Year.
I'm not saying it's not a good game.
At the Game Awards, like that, whatever that means, but, you know.
Yeah. Have not played it. As we learned last week, Souls-likes are just not really my genre.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's hard for me to pull apart, is that do I just not enjoy them because it's a type of gameplay that I don't like? Or do I not enjoy them because such a staple of the genre is that they are hard and I'm not good at them, so I don't want to play them.
I mean, more than being hard, they're like a particular kind of hard, too, though.
I agree, but elaborate.
Well, they're very slow and meticulous.
Yeah.
And a lot of them require very particular timing, too, which is something that I am bad at. You know? I can't do frame perfect things.
It's something that I admire when I see it done, and it's something that I can enjoy on a limited scale in games. Like, I think that's why not that I've really played that many of them, but that's why I think that the Kingdom Hearts boss fights, data fights, are so fun.
Yeah.
Is because, hey, you have this, 10-minute experience where you get to be very meticulous for one battle. But yeah, I just don't have the patience. I don't have the patience for those games, which I'm willing to admit, does not make them bad games.
I mean, but again, Kingdom Hearts is a different kind of difficult than Souls-likes. In Code Vein,
100%.
It's if I make a mistake, I know that I've made a mistake for 20 seconds while my character is finishing the animation, and then the boss kills me. At least in Kingdom Hearts, it's just done.
I know. In Code Vein, I accidentally, because I was still learning the controls, right?
Mm-hmm.
I accidentally healed myself a bunch of times, and I didn't need to be healed, and I was like, crap. Now I don't have I've wasted a heal forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that too.
So what I'm saying is that I can't remember control schemes, and people should dumb down their games for me. But we've gone off on several game-related tangents here. So I'll circle it back to fair and unfair difficulty. I think Sekiro, from what it seems very fair to me.
I've heard some complaints about certain boss fights, but yeah, overall.
Sure. You have to have in your hard game, you have to have a couple of boss fights that feel like BS. Just a little bit.
I actually think you mostly want to avoid that feeling as much as possible in any game.
I think you want to avoid it as much as possible, but I think you need to have one boss that everyone's going to go to the internet and be like, F this guy on Twitter, so that more people hear about your game.
I guess, but you want that in, a good way, though.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't want someone, and again,
I'm
this is maybe just speaking from me, but, if I know that my strategy is wrong, that's one thing. But, if I press the X button, a second too late and I die because of that, and there's no opportunity to rebuttal, hello, Indivisible.
You've got me dreading the end of this game, Emma.
You'll probably be better at the blocking than I am. I just was really unprepared to have to block perfectly. And so I dropped it because I don't have patience for that.
Brutal.
That's one thing, is I felt like a lot of the bosses in Indivisible were fair until I got to that last one where you have to do this certain thing with perfect timing or you die. That's it.
It is interesting to me that so much of the discussion around difficulty in games essentially comes down to those kinds of perfect timing types of difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
I realize Sekiro is not in any way the same as what you're describing with Indivisible, but it is a similar idea of this, you have to wait for the right moment to attack.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. And how little I see any discourse around difficulty in games that deals with any other way that a game might be difficult than the gameplay.
Well, I mean, I think that's partially because, in a puzzle game, eventually you've tried everything. You know?
I guess that's true. I mean, I also think it's because there's no way for puzzle games to be hard anymore, because anyone can Google it.
Yeah, but even if you're going, the purest route of, you're not a true gamer if you don't look it up, you know? At the end of the day, there's some combination of things that will work. Right? And it doesn't require you to, have skill, necessarily. You can brute force your way through anything in a puzzle game, theoretically.
I feel like I was playing something recently that was... Oh, I'm just thinking of Indivisible and how nothing is frickin' marked, so never mind. Forget about me.
That's another way it's just games can be difficult when they have poor UI and UX.
Yeah. But I do feel like the whole discourse is dominated by kind of mechanical difficulty rather than anything about difficult puzzles or, whatever, right? Like, Telltale is zombie now, but, like, for the past few years, we haven't had to talk too much about, like, difficult choices. Like, I feel like...
I think there was some discussion about difficult choices back when Telltale was,
Oh, that's what I was trying to say. That now that Telltale is in zombie state, we're not really talking about it anymore. But that certainly was a part of the discourse for a few years, and now I think has sort of that kind of difficult choice idea has sort of fallen off a bit.
Yeah.
Which is weird because it was so trendy back when we were starting the podcast.
Yeah.
But it must just come back to that, kind of machismo mentality of it's harder to tone down, like, those kinds... Like, there's no way to have an easy mode. That's not true, but there's less ways to have an easy mode on puzzles or on dialogue options than there are for,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's almost no way to have easy mode on dialogue-based games.
Yeah, you eliminate the middle ground choice.
Isn't that harder
mode,
little
thing
actually?
Floating over it that's like, this is a bad idea.
Easy mode is like putting in the middle ground choice, actually, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Easy mode is the character actually says what you chose for them. As opposed to something that's sort of like what you chose, but isn't really what you chose.
Something refined. No, Cloud.
Come on.
Something mature, please.
It makes me wonder what he says at Exotic.
I wonder, too. Like, what were the other ones? What would he have said?
When I get it, I'll pick something else.
Okay. Something sporty had, like, a ... in the middle, which made me think, that seems bad. That seems like a bad choice. In case you're wondering, there's an incredibly difficult choice in Final Fantasy VII Remake in which you have to tell Tifa what you think would look good on her.
To be honest, it does seem to be the most difficult part of the game for Twitter. Seen a lot of screenshots of that moment.
Does this choice matter or not? You'll just have to find out yourself.
I can't wait. Imagine if that game was going to make you choose whether or not to save Aerith.
Madelyn. I'm just kidding.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry.
I don't think...
I meant just hypothetically.
It won't get to that point, actually.
I know that this game, except that obviously we will, you have to flip Kingdom Hearts 3 over, and it's the second half of the game. Twist. I know we aren't going to get to it in this game, but imagine that kind of difficult nostalgia choice.
Yeah.
Of like, am I going to betray my nostalgia for this game? Or am I going to do what I always wished I could do?
Yeah.
What a funky kind of difficulty that would be.
The only puzzle game I can think of that has difficulty that I've played is Danganronpa has difficulty settings. But I think that's because it's like a puzzle action game in addition to being a puzzle game, hence the difficulty modes. Whereas stuff like Phoenix Wright does not have difficulties. It just has good cases and BS cases. Difficulty varies wildly based on how well a case is written.
Yikes. So, let's talk about the stigma around easy mode a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it comes from older games themselves. Because it used to be, like, the hip, cool thing to do to, like, name your difficulty modes to make fun of your players.
Yeah.
Basically, like, Wolfenstein is probably the best example. Like, I think the first one, like, the easiest mode was, like, can I play Daddy?
Yeah.
And showed Blazkowicz.
Yeah.
With a baby bonnet and pacifier on the side as the icon. And there's a bunch more examples of that, all mostly just along that vein. I didn't look super hard, but I couldn't think of any games that do it the opposite way. Like,
where they're like
what's normal and like
on the difficult
somebody's overcompensating for something as like the hardest mode.
You should make that game.
I mean, I think it's like nobody should be shamed for playing on any difficulty level, but I would rather it be the other way than the easy is the loser's way.
Yeah. But where does that come from? Why in games specifically are we so much like...
I mean, it's kind of a gatekeeper-y community.
Yeah.
Overall. And I think that is part of it. I was also thinking about, and again, I probably should have done some research on this, but like, arcade games used to have high difficulty or high difficulty sections in order to mine quarters out of you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, maybe that, like, it became a point of pride if you could get through that. I don't know.
Sure, I mean, there's definitely a lot of weird pride attached to video games for people in ways that it's difficult, although not impossible, to think of analogous things in other media. Like, I'm thinking, like, reading unabridged versions of, like, the Russian classics, right? Emma.
What?
Or something like that. Or like, sub versus dub in anime.
Oh, yeah. Those people.
Or, like, imagine that for, like, movies, though. Imagine, like, you didn't watch it in the original Farsi. Like, use subtitles.
I'm sure there are those kinds of people out there.
I'm sure there are. But it's interesting to me that in games, it's so front and center. All, like, people's, like, you take something away from me by someone else being able to play this game who didn't have to be as good at it as I was.
Yeah, that's, like, the weird part of it, right? Is that people who get upset about this are allowing somebody else's experience to take away from their own experience. You know? I mean, and I said we would bring Animal Crossing into this, right? I do kind of feel that way, not to the point where I would complain about it on Twitter, but like seeing people who time travel in Animal Crossing and then like looking at my own village, or people who use any sort of like exploits that people have found, like the cloning glitch or stuff like that. And it does kind of make me feel bad when I'm playing Animal Crossing a little bit. So I'm like, this is like the opposite way. It's like,
yeah, it is though. Yeah.
Why is my village so like, you know, empty and sad compared to everybody else's? So I guess I have felt that a little bit, but in the opposite way, because I'm playing Animal Crossing on hard mode. Looking at all the fun people have on easy mode.
But it's more of like, it's like a FOMO thing with that. To me. It's like a social media envy thing.
Right.
I feel like it's a similar kind of idea, but it's not quite the same feeling.
It's like the fear of other people missing out.
Yeah.
Or like, I mean, I guess it's that same sort of feeling of like handing off someone you love to somebody else and then they don't appreciate it the same way that you do.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah.
You watch a movie that's like your favorite movie and then like your friend laughs through all the sad parts. again, I feel like that's more upsetting than somebody playing a game you like on easy mode. But, like, I guess that's where the feeling comes from.
It's just, to me, it's like the feeling of, like, you're being underpaid at your work, but they hire someone else, like, who's, like, below you. And even though you're already being like, you want them to be paid less than you just because they're, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that feeling. It's like, because I've been here longer, even though I'm not getting paid what I'm worth, you should get paid even less than me.
Yeah.
Which is, like, I find so dumb.
Well, I mean, I think that's a more sadistic point of view. Because you don't want them to get paid less. You want them to get paid not more than
nothing.
You want them to get paid exactly the same amount as you. Basically.
I guess that's true.
Which does slightly come from a fundamental misunderstanding of, like, for some people, the easy experience is the same amount of money as you are getting on the hard experience.
Yes.
To totally
it's taken me a moment to
this metaphor. But, like,
yeah.
For some people, the lower difficulty is just as difficult for them as the higher difficulty is for somebody who is better at games.
Emma, you're forgetting that they have to get good. We can't let these people who aren't like us play these games.
I know. I hate the personality of, like, if you just put the time and work in. Like, that's what I don't get. How do people have time to put the time and work in? Like, do they not have jobs or responsibilities of any sort?
Their wives do all the work around the house, Emma.
I mean, I'm sure there are people who, you know, people write about video games, people play video games for a living, all that sorts of stuff. But, like, the average person who plays video games, I feel like, should not have time. I mean, and then, you know, maybe there's some satisfaction to be had from that. Like, that's your way of de-stressing, is getting good at this one particular video game. But I'd like to think that those sorts of people would understand why somebody else wouldn't do that. You know? Because, like, I know I don't have time and energy to put into something that is, like, running my head into a brick wall.
It's just like, you want to have the trophy and you don't want anyone else to have the trophy. And I don't mean that literally in the PlayStation sense. I just mean you want something that makes you feel like you're special. Ooh, maybe this is getting a little too harsh.
Yeah, you are. You're all your metaphors are, like, just a smidgen a little too harsh.
This is gonna be a little nasty, I'm sorry, folks. But, like, you want, by finishing this game, you think that you are special. And when you see that the young woman, me, has also finished the game, you feel a little bit less special. Because I could not be as good at this as you are. And it should be a special thing for you to feel special about. End nasty comment.
Something...
Do you think we could fix...
Sorry, you go ahead.
Do you think we could fix some of this just by renaming difficulties in weird and difficult to understand ways?
Maybe, but then also, like, people don't know what they're picking.
Yeah, I mean, then we fix that with adjustable difficulty.
Yeah, that is something that I know perhaps purists wouldn't, but that's something I really appreciate in a lot of modern games, is more and more let you change the difficulty on the fly. Which is really nice.
As long as I get to choose, as long as the game is not choosing that for me.
They're not really modern games that do that, right? That's more of an older game thing.
Like dynamic difficulty, I mean.
Oh, dynamic difficulty is just like when things scale to your level, though, isn't it?
I know. I just, like, sometimes I want to be crushing things.
Yeah, that is the difficulty with dynamic difficulty. Is like, Well, the benefit is, like, if you have, like, a JRPG where you're going back and revisiting areas that you've already been to for stuff, like, you can still fight monsters and get stronger, right? But the downside is that you have, like, the weaker enemies won't, like, run from you, so you have to, like, fight things. And they're all, like, real battles, you know?
Yeah.
So that is the trouble there. And you cannot, like, get ahead, right? Like, grinding does nothing on dynamic difficulty. I mean, it could make you better at the game, I guess, because you've got more practice. But your characters aren't just better, generally.
I'm in favor of esoteric difficulty settings, because to be honest, difficulty settings mean so little to begin with.
I've been liking the ones that, like, are, like, what do you want out of this game?
Yeah.
Right? More than just saying, like, easy, normal, hard. Like, I like the I want a story, I want a balanced experience, I want a challenge type things.
I know, but even that, so, like, the I want a story is clear, but the balanced experience versus I want a challenge, that's me playing a mind game with the developer of what do you think is a challenge versus what do you think is a balanced experience. Which, there's very little way to combat that, but you were saying, oh, the problem with these difficulty levels that are randomly named is people won't know what they're picking, but I already only sort of know what I'm picking.
I mean, I think I know what I'm picking there.
I'm just thinking, like,
if there's, like, story balance challenge, then I know the challenge is hard.
I know, like, I'm thinking, okay, like, with Kingdom Hearts, right, this time around, like, Proud was, like, sort of normal mode. To me. I didn't find it especially challenging. Or, like, with Fire Emblem, I played on normal, but I wish I had upped it a difficult. Like, it's just like when you don't get to choose when you don't get to adjust once you have an idea of what that difficulty actually means, you're still kind of really flying pretty blind.
Right. I believe on Fire Emblem you can set it down, so I probably should have.
Yeah, you can set it down, but not set it up. I know. So I really should have put it hardest at first.
I did not know that at the time, I think.
Alas. And of course, I think we can both agree that locking off content for just the hard mode is bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing, we talked about Valkyrie Profile a few weeks ago, and that game is meant to be played multiple times anyway, right? So, like, that doesn't necessarily bother me in that it's encouraging you to replay it in certain ways because it wants you to replay it.
Yeah.
But, like, if it's just, like, a one-time experience, I think that it's not a good way to handle it to block off content.
Yeah. Agreed.
And, like, at that point, why are you putting it in?
To be mean.
Yeah. But, like, what's the point of making a mode in which the players playing in that mode cannot experience all of your game? At that point, just, like, leave it out.
To shame those people.
I mean, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if you know that you cannot play all the game on that mode, like, how many people are picking that? That's something that would be worth looking into, I think. That's a study idea.
Yeah, what percentage of people actually pick what gameplay levels?
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Based on different, like, amounts of knowledge and stuff like that, too.
That would be really interesting to know. Because it does rely on you knowing that you're seeding some content.
Yeah.
Well, despite all this, I still, like, basically refuse to play on easy mode.
Yeah.
Despite knowing that it comes from, like, a toxic place.
It doesn't come from a toxic place to pick the difficulty mode that you want.
I know, but...
You don't go around saying, do you play on easy? Huh?
No, okay, that wasn't fair. Despite knowing that some of my reticence to play on easy mode comes from the toxic discourse around easy mode. I still haven't quite internalized it.
I mean, I just think that, for me, normal mode is just the mode where I feel most comfortable most of the time. And it's a very rare game where I feel like I'll turn the difficulty up for some reason. That being said, when I can change it on the fly, I am more encouraged to try harder difficulties.
That's true. Yeah, that's another way adjustable difficulty, I think, actually helps people get good. I just keep saying this every 5 minutes, get good. Is that there's no... Like, that is why on Fire Emblem, for example, I picked the normal one. Because I was like, I don't know how hard this is going to be. I don't want to slaughter myself over this game.
Yeah.
So not only does it, give you the option to wuss out, to parrot some of our Twitter discourse, but it also potentially gives you the option to try things at a slightly higher level of difficulty.
Yeah.
Another thing I would be interested to see is how often do people change difficulty and why in games.
Yeah. I've been having a real wild ride with difficulty in Trails of Cold Steel. There just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason between what boss fights are hard and what are easy. And even the ones where, like, this guy's so good, it's an unbeatable boss battle. It's like, I'm pretty sure I could have won this, though. You've given me a few more turns.
Yeah.
Pretty sure I would have won. And then there'll be, like, bosses before the last boss of the chapter that are harder than the last boss of the chapter. Which, again, doesn't make sense to me.
Ultimate unfair difficulty?
What?
Leon. Kingdom Hearts 1.
Even when you win, you don't win. Some games also offer, like, stuff like Celeste's Assist mode now, in which you're not really changing the difficulty level, but, like, giving yourself a little wiggle room, or a lot of wiggle room, depending.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more in the past couple of years, games not just offer, brute force adjustable difficulty, but give you a whole lot of toggles to kind of choose what you want to be difficult and what you want to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
Which, on one level, feels like it's gotta be just a buttload of work. But on the other hand, kind of takes the responsibility of the game actually feeling balanced off of you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've decided to pick selections that unbalance the game, like, that's your own fault, buddy.
But I like stuff like that, and I don't even mind, like... Obviously, the developer has a way that they want the game to be played a lot of times, right? Like, the people who make From Software games, they want the game to be played at this level. That's why they have it there. And I started Pathologic 2 recently, and, like, they have 2 easier modes. But it does tell you when you pick them, it's like, hey man, pick this, but just know, like, this isn't the intended difficulty. Like, it's supposed to be hard. And, like, I don't really mind that. It doesn't really feel shamey in the same way that, like, mocking titles feel. It just feels like these people made a game, they intended to be played this way, but they understand if you cannot play it that way.
It's tough, though, because it is also kind of... And it's hard, right? It's hard to expect people to make games that feel balanced at all these difficulty levels. But it does feel like you're kind of throwing up your hands and saying, like, sorry, like, we couldn't balance this.
But that's not the case. In this case, in Pathologic 2's case, it's meant to be hard.
Yeah.
Like, not balanced in the fact that it feels like you're constantly dying. That's how Pathologic 2 is supposed to feel. And
that's
so
true.
when you put it down, you sort of lose the atmosphere, right? Because difficulty is a storytelling device as much as any other thing is.
No, it's very... I mean, I can't imagine having to deal with balancing kind of the aesthetics of difficulty and the... Not to conflate it with accessibility for people who have genuine accessibility needs, but, like, accessibility to audiences of varying play experiences of difficulty. That must just be impossible. So I have great respect for folks that are able to do it in ways that are creative and successful, because it's certainly not as easy as just being like, oh yeah, everyone should have an easy mode. Even though, hey, everyone should have an easy mode, it's not just like they can be like, yes, let's put in the easy code here.
Yeah.
And suddenly the easy code is activated.
Yeah.
Because I do sympathize with that, although often kind of disingenuous part of the discourse that difficulty is part of the game experience.
Yeah.
And that if it's not difficult, you're not experiencing the game, which I can agree with. But obviously, some of us are not as good at certain types of games.
Yeah. It's just that difficulty is like a subjective experience.
Yep.
And like if I'm going to play, like I picked the middle option, so like the first easy difficulty on Past Logic 2. Because I'm a normal player, even though I guess that's not, the normal is the hardest one, but you know.
Yeah.
But like I just know that like if I picked the normal one, I just wouldn't play it. And I think that's why they included that, because they want people to play it, right? They want people to experiencing it in whatever way they can. And that's why they added those modes to it.
Well, it's another consideration there you brought up, right? We don't want people putting the game down.
Yeah.
We don't want the game, like, we want to challenge people with difficulty, but you don't want to make it so hard that it's not fun to play.
Yeah.
Or that the way in which it is not fun to play is so not satisfying that, like, games don't have to be fun to play, but they have to do something that makes you want to play them.
Yeah.
What a pithy quote from me.
And it's almost impossible to do something, even with tons of difficulty modes, that will satisfy every player. Just the way it is. You cannot playtest the entire population, and even if you did, you could not assemble that feedback into something that would work.
One day the robots will figure it out.
But then somebody will play it and be like, feels like robots made this, I don't like it. You know? And then you fix it so that it doesn't feel like robots anymore, and someone will be like,
I miss the robots.
It to feel like robots made it. I don't like it.
Oh, you just can't win.
Anyway.
Well, Emma, any other thoughts on difficulty?
I mean, we could, go back and forth on this a lot, but basically at the end of the day, it's a difficult question. In terms of designers wanting to make the game that they want to make versus appealing to a wide variety of players versus the fact that difficulty is a subjective experience. And so, like, the experience you're crafting for one player might not be a good experience for another player, versus, like, how players have to make that decision for themselves, what is good for them, versus, like, when you're playing a game, can you really complain if it's too hard, if you purposely picked the hard difficulty? Or can you complain that it's too easy when you put it on the easy mode?
Can easy mode, in fact, be too easy if you chose it?
Exactly.
Well, folks, you know what else is easy? Keeping up with Talk This Podcast on social media!
Woo!
We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast. And we're on YouTube at Talk This Sisters. So you should tweet or DM or whatever at us and tell us why we're wrong about easy modes, probably. or what your favorite difficulty schema has been. What's the weirdest one that you've encountered in games? Or any of that good stuff. We'd love to hear it. You can also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read more about the show, see the games that we pick our main episode content from in the hat, and also check out the blog, where you can read long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend, getting very close to the end of KH Remind now, with the special Mickey Mouse episode coming soon. And also Split Screen, where Emma and I are watching Coffee Prince and My Hero Academia. There have been some good episodes lately that are coming down the pipeline, so if you're not caught up on Split Screen, you really should be.
Yeah.
There's also been some standalone blog content in the past couple weeks. Buzz This is back with an Animal Crossing quiz. We had some thoughts on Animal Crossing. So the blog is hopping in these self-isolated times, so check it out. And finally, so that you too can know what day of the week is Sunday and what time of the day is noon, you should subscribe to the show. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts on the app and on the website, Overcast, Pocket Casts. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This.
Next week, we're talking about Dead Space and Star Wars. Jedi, Fallen Order.
Fallen Order. It was on sale this week, but it was not on sale enough that I bought it.
Yeah.
So I need to see if I can get Dead Space.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about the fact that I have to play these games. Will my streak come to an end? You'll have to tune in next week to find out.
You'll have to, watch a Let's Play or something, at least, if you can't get Dead Space.
Yeah. We'll give myself, half credit for that, maybe. And in 2 weeks, tune in for our next side quest, where we'll talk about what we've been playing.
Animal Crossing.
Final
Fantasy. Lots of other stuff.
We've been playing a lot of games.
Sure have.
It has not been difficult to play a lot of games.
Well, do you want to sign us off?
Yeah, that's it for this week's show. So, folks, I hope that you have a week that is the level of difficulty that you wish it to be.